Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, welcome to Fix Michigan Mondays with your host. This is Wayne Bradley, and I want to thank everybody for listening in on Fix Michigan Mondays. Got a special guest tonight, Wendy Lynn Day, who's the leader and organizer of the Tea Party, and I believe she's calling in now.
Hi.
Hi, Wendy. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you for joining me on the show tonight.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Great. You know, I've been following you on Facebook for a while, and that's kind of how I got acquainted with you. And you've really motivated me, and I'm sure you've motivated a lot of people. Can you give us a small introduction and just tell us how you got involved with the Tea Party? And
sure.
Organizer. How about that?
Yeah. You know what? What's amazing about the Tea Party is that there's not just one organizer. There's so many leaders across the state and across the country. I was involved in organizing the first two Tea Parties in Michigan, and the first one being February 2009. And it was so exciting to help organize those. And then after that, we formed the group called Common Sense in Government. Common Sense in Government is a nonpartisan organization that works to hold legislators accountable. Because we looked around and discovered, that the problem was that politicians were not serving the people; they were serving the system, and that's why even though they were good people in many circumstances, they were making really dumb decisions. So we have been doing that ever since, and we're having a great time, like I said, holding those politicians accountable.
Right. And so you said last year was the first event that you organized. What made you? Were you involved in politics before? Before the last year or two, were you involved in any grassroots level of politics?
I was involved in political parties. I started out actually long ago in college as a Democrat, and then I worked with the Republicans for a while, and I even was a legislative assistant for a while. And what I really learned was that whether they have an R or a D behind their name isn't all that indicative of how they're going to vote and how they feel about the role of government and how they want to spend your tax dollars, because we've got some Democrats who make really good choices for the people, and we have some Republicans who make really bad choices for the people. So I've kind of run the gamut in terms of political ideology and really landed on the side of free markets and individual accountability and responsibility, and really getting back to the foundation of our country.
And did you realize, and I guess like you said, realizing that, is that what made you say that the Tea Parties are recognized more, that kind of movement was more of an independent thing and it wasn't exactly a political party, sort of say?
Correct. I really think that a lot of the Tea Parties, people are just fed up with, what's been going on in Lansing and Washington, the lack of accountability and transparency. And, I just think that it's a general feeling of anger and dissatisfaction. Some people may think that the Tea Party folks have kind of cast their lot with the Republicans, and maybe some have, but the reality is, I tell people that if we don't hold them accountable once we elect them, it doesn't matter who we elect. And just because they have an R behind their name doesn't mean they hold true to our principles and to the values that our country was based upon. It doesn't mean that at all. So if we're not willing to hold them accountable, there's no magic bullet. The Republican Party is not the magic answer to this situation that we're in.
How do you feel about the Republican Party essentially courting the Tea Parties the way they have? I mean, it's not just that the media has made it seem that way. The Republicans have definitely done a better job of reaching out. Conservative-wise, have done a good job of reaching out to the Tea Parties. How do you feel about them reaching out and essentially, again, courting the Tea Party movement?
Hey, I think they can kind of try to woo us all they want to. All we're asking for is them to behave and vote correctly. And, as far as the Democratic Party, one of the things that's frustrating for me is that I talked to a lot of Democrats during the last election cycle, and many of the people that I know that vote Democrat, they're just like me in many ways. They feel the same way about most issues, and yet they vote Democrat for whatever reason, not realizing that the Democratic leadership they're electing are radical leftists in large part. And it's frustrating because, like I said, they don't necessarily know that, and they don't know that they're electing such radical people. They're more of like a JFK kind of Democrat, where he actually probably would be conservative or Republican now.
Right. And do you think that did you see before Obama was elected? Did you see this coming? Did you think it would be to this extreme level of where the government is just trying to expand their role?
I didn't, and you know what? I'm just as guilty as everybody else. We weren't paying attention. Life is busy, and you're trying to keep your job and take care of your kids, and because this isn't just about Barack Obama. I mean, we've been traveling down this road for a long time, and many of us are just starting to wake up and really realize how far we've come. I talk to a lot of older people, and I remind them that my generation and younger, we did not grow up in the same America that they did. I mean, our education has been different. Our view of the role of government and entitlement, the role of family has been different. Most of us don't have any idea about the America that they grew up in. And obviously some good things happened in the 1960s, but it seems like a whole lot of, there was, along with the good things that happened, there was a lot of removal of the underpinnings of our society, and that it's had some long-lasting damaging effects.
Right, I understand. And so with your experience and being an organizer and dealing with obviously this being a campaign year here in Michigan, how have the candidates that are running for governor and attorney general and that sort of thing, how have they treated the Tea Party movement? How do you feel they've treated them, and how involved have they been?
I think they understand that this is a movement to be reckoned with, and that they are actively courting the Tea Party groups. I think the Tea Party groups, it would be a mistake for them to align themselves too strongly with any of the major candidates at this point, unless there's somebody that they know is principled. I've been telling people, work for good candidates if you really believe, that they are the right person for the job, but save your energy for 2011 in January, because that's when the real work is going to begin. I'm also working on the Michigan Citizens for Healthcare petition drive as well, and that's really where our focus is for the next couple of months, because it's a huge effort that we've undertaken. And
can you explain to the people listening about that petition?
Yeah. Basically, what this does is it would be a constitutional amendment to the Michigan Constitution placed on the ballot in November for the Michigan citizens to vote on. And what it does is it says that no government can force you to join a government-run healthcare system, not the state government, not the federal government. It also says that you can pay cash or use private healthcare insurance to purchase lawful healthcare services and cannot be prevented from doing that by the government. In Canada, even if you have money and want to go get treated by a doctor, you're actually not allowed to pay cash for your treatment. You have to use their system. And it also says that the government can't punish or penalize healthcare providers for taking your cash or private healthcare insurance. So it really works to protect Michigan citizens who may be happy with their healthcare coverage right now and want to be able to have freedom in their healthcare choices.
Have any of the candidates running for governor, have they supported this petition?
Yep. Hoekstra, Bouchard, Cox, and Snyder have all signed the healthcare freedom petition.
Okay, they all signed it, because I was at a recent event, and Snyder hadn't signed at that time, so he did go ahead and sign the petition?
He did. You actually can watch a YouTube video of him signing it if you want to.
Okay, that's good, because I was at a recent event, and at that time, I guess he hadn't read the petition yet. At that time he wasn't willing to sign it, but that's good that he's willing to sign it.
I'm not really sure what his motivation was for turning it down, but at the end of the day, I mean, this is an issue that every politician has to do a gut check on and say, am I going to stand with the system or am I going to stand with the people? And
I was a little surprised. I mean, because I was actually at that event when he didn't initially resisted signing it, and I said, well, and me and Dennis, who were sitting there, we actually talked about that, and it was a very simple petition as far as what was being petitioned. So that's good. Have any Democratic candidates signed on to this petition at all?
Not that I know of. The governor candidates, I don't know yet. And I'm going to be very interested to see if they're willing to. You know, to me, this is a very common sense a petition drive and constitutional amendment that I think anybody should be able to get behind. I mean, it doesn't say that we're not going to help those who need it. All it does is says that if we're happy with what we have, the government can't force us into something we don't want to be forced into. And to me, that's just, like I said, common sense.
That is common sense, and I hope that at least some of the Democrats will at least read it, and you know, instead of just not again cooperating or listening to you. Who are you identifying as leaders? You know, either on a national level, or leaders or faces of the Tea Party movement.
You know, that's such a hard one because we live in such a technological age that, and with Facebook and everything, you know, if you have 3 friends and a website, you have a group, and you might be the leader of it. And in some ways, I think that's the beauty of this movement is that it's so organic that groups are sprouting up all over the place pretty much every week. And what's really great about that is that, you know, if we were all united under one banner, let's say, you know, we made you the leader of the Tea Party movement across the state of Michigan and crowned you king of the Tea Party movement, all the left would have to do is, you know, do a little research, make up a lie, whatever, slander you, take you down, and then, you know, theoretically really damage the entire movement. But with a movement as organic as this one is, they can't take the movement down because they can't pin us down as to who's really in charge. And, you know, I would love it if we had corporate funding. I mean, if there's corporate funding out there, please send me a check because I don't have any. But there's, you know, it's hard for them to understand that it really is that organic. But there are several great groups across the state. You know, Tea Party of West Michigan, Steve Ross of the Tea Party Alliance is fantastic. There's a lot of really good people that are leading Tea Party groups and efforts across the state, and it's amazing to watch.
I agree. And as far as on a national level, like with people like Sarah Palin or Michelle Bachmann or Mike Pence, how do you feel about them being, you know, on a national level, people they try to identify as being Tea Party leaders?
Well, I think it's more like, you know, they endorse the Tea Party movement. It's not that the Tea Party movement needs to endorse them. You know, if they make good decisions, then people will stand beside them and celebrate that. If they make stupid decisions, then I think people will, you know, hold them accountable for that and question them. You know, one of the challenges I think to the Tea Party movement is to try to understand how to state principles and how to have grace, because, you know, nobody's perfect. You know, if you agree with someone 80% of the time, then you should count them as a friend. And I think we have some growing to do in that regard with politicians and when to hold them accountable and hold their feet to the fire and when to extend a little bit of a grace for humanness. You know, all that's going to be worked out, I think, as the movement matures and the people involved become more savvy about it. And that doesn't mean necessarily that they lose their grassrootsiness. It just means that they continue to evolve in how they look at things and figure out how to really leverage the power that the movement has to hold politicians accountable at the right time.
Right. Through all your events that you've been a part of, have you seen any of the negative backlash that the media's tried to, you know, report? Have you seen anything that you could identify with that would say that, you know, that they're even halfway reporting the truth? Because I've been to some of these events myself, and I've never seen anything like that as an African-American male. So I'm just curious, have you seen anything, being the organizer, that has caused you any concern or given them any weight to what they've said is going on?
Right. Well, as a white woman, I have not. No, I'm just teasing you. Actually, no. The only bad behavior I've seen was actually from a group of leftists called By Any Means Necessary, who kind of infiltrated a student group and showed up at our State of the Citizen address and screamed and swore during the national anthem and the pledge and with a bullhorn, you know, and they were just completely obnoxious and very rude. And that's the only bad behavior I've really seen. Other than that, you know what I see? I see like men and women who, you know, bring their kids and grandkids, and I've seen rallies where, you know, a half an hour after it's over, you never knew they were there because every piece of trash is picked up. I've seen like grandparents with tears in their eyes because they're so worried about the future of our country and where their grandkids are, what kind of country their grandkids are going to have to grow up in. That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing, yes, people are mad, but they're not angry and just lashing out. They're angry and trying to focus their energy to do something positive, and that's a very different approach than some of the leftist groups like By Any Means Necessary, who will do anything, ethical or not, to get their voices heard. And that's just not the Tea Party movement.
I totally agree, and I think that's the one thing that when I spoke at in Carroll, Michigan, I made the point of saying, don't waste your energy on just being mad. Actually get involved and do things. Call your leaders locally and voice your opinion. Send out emails, letters, do what it takes. But essentially, just making noise is not going to be the effective route of getting things done.
That's exactly right. And it's not even like, because sending letters to them in Lansing or Washington, they can totally blow you off, and they will. If they don't want to hear your voice, 40,000 phone calls a day went into Washington, and they ignored the American people and betrayed their trust. And, so what we've done is take a little bit of a different tack. We actually try to bridge the gap between the politicians and their districts, their voters, by going into their hometown, letting their voters know what they're up to. They get these nice newsletters saying how great their guy or girl is, and we let them know some of the stuff that they're doing that they may not be so happy about, so they can hold their own legislators accountable. And it's been very, very effective in putting pressure on legislators. And it's not out of mean-spiritedness. You can't do it to be hateful. It's more like an accountability partner to help them stay true to who they said they were during their campaign.
I think, like you said, both sides of the aisle need that, because I think once whether it's in Lansing or whether they get to D.C., that it just infiltrates this. They get dirty, and we need people on the local level to keep these people honest. So I've always felt that since the Tea Party began, I think that's a great, because again, conservatives right now have they have the minority, so they can blame everything on Democrats, but they were in charge before too, and things got sloppy on their watch also. So
that's right.
I think that you definitely have to keep both parties in line. Do you think that the Tea Party should be looked at as a political party, or more as I want to say a watchdog, and to keep making sure that we keep all both sides in line?
I don't know how it's going to end up, to be honest about it. I don't know if there's a good term for it now. Right now it's kind of like this ball of energy that's kind of moving. And, last year I think people felt like they finally woke up, and it's almost like they were, a bomb went off. And they stumbled out of their house kind of in a daze and ended up at these rallies all over the place, looking for answers and struggling to kind of figure out what the heck happened and when and how did we get here. And a year later, we've kind of like I said, matured a little bit, and now we're starting to think about what those answers might be. And some of those answers, could be electing the right candidates this coming November, and I think that's why people are kind of focusing on that. But I don't think we can, again, discount in any way, shape, or form the necessity to hold these guys accountable. So I'm hoping that we, work to elect good people, but that we really save our energy for next year, because, my biggest fear is that the Republicans will sweep into power because of the tide and not because they've earned it. And if we don't hold them accountable, then nothing will change. It might slow down a little bit, but it won't change.
Right, I agree. So from where you stand right now, are you getting really involved in the 2010 elections? Are you recommending any candidates, anybody we should be looking out for here in Michigan, or good candidates?
You know what? Blissfully, I'm staying mostly out of it. We have a 381,000 ballot signatures to gather by June 26th. But I will tell you this. There is one extremely important race in Michigan, and it's not on most people's radar yet. The one extremely important race in Michigan is going to be Secretary of State. And frankly, all I care about is beating Jocelyn Benson. She is a George Soros acorn candidate who is a plant that will lead to destruction in our state, and we can't have it. So Jocelyn Benson may be a very nice lady, but she is not going to be the Secretary of State. She can't be.
All right.
So that's the only thing I've committed to so far.
Well, that sounds good. She was just nominated this weekend during that Democratic, what do they call it, their little electoral process.
Yes, she was. Yeah, in their convention. Yep.
All right.
So, and we saw this coming. You know, George Soros brags on his blog that he was able to get Al Franken in because first he took out the Secretary of State. And so if we want those kind of politics happening in Michigan, if we want, you know, the George Soros, Chicago-style politics happening in Michigan, then Jocelyn Benson's our girl. But if we want honesty and integrity in the ballot box, then she needs to not win.
Wow. Well, we're going to keep an eye on that, and I'm sure we're going to have you back on the show. I saw an interesting YouTube video of you, and you spoke about Sarah Palin. And just briefly, because I posted that on my Twitter site, and I've got over 16,000 people that follow me, and they were like, people
wow.
really were interested in hearing how, you know, your feelings on that. And I just wanted to get, why do you think the media has such an obsession with Sarah Palin and the way they talk about her in such a negative way?
You know, I think the media, she's hard to pin down. She is a beautiful woman who doesn't pretend to be the political elite or an intellectual snob. She's tougher than many men, maybe, and she's feminine and beautiful. So I don't know why. I think I think the idea of being a feminist really, to me, is defined as just doing what's necessary to take care of your family. And so to me, Sarah Palin is a great feminist. She's a strong mom and a great wife, and but they can't pin her down. It's hard to demonize her, and so and she's threatening. I think at the end of the day, she's a threat, and so I think they've done a great disservice to her and her family. I mean, it's pretty disgusting to see how she's been treated. And you know what? She's not perfect. She's human, like we all are. And I can't imagine how hard it's been for her to be on the national stage and be maligned each and every day in ways that are so undeserved. And where are the feminist groups standing up for her? Yeah. Where are the people saying that that's not fair? They're nowhere to be found.
I was just about to ask that question. It's like I've not one time heard any feminist organization stick up for her when her family or her, you know, the personal attacks have been made. I understand the political jokes and all that kind of stuff, but when you start talking about people's families and their kids and stuff like that, I think...
Well, and Saturday Night Live, I mean, how dare they? I cannot believe that they were allowed to insinuate that Todd Palin was sleeping with his daughters. I mean, really?
That's my whole point. Like, that's not even funny in any kind of way. That's not entertaining. You know, I don't understand where they, you know, and again, they get a pass because, again, if it was the other way around, if Bill O'Reilly or Sean Hannity made that kind of joke about, you know, a liberal, I mean, it would just be, you know, you'd never hear the end of it.
Oh, you know what, and it's just, yeah, I mean, it's been really shocking, and I think you know, it's not really about Barack Obama or Sarah Palin, but what this whole year has been about to me is about really taking a gut check about where we are as a country, about the lack of a moral foundation to stand on where that kind of behavior is acceptable, about electing a president who says right out loud that we're going to spread the wealth around and talks about socialistic issues and people elect him anyway. I mean, those are real big gut checks in terms of like maybe our mind and our heart as a country. You know, where are we intellectually as a country in terms of the role of government, and where is our heart as a country in terms of just, you know, basic moral courtesy and basic civil behavior and discourse? I think we should be greatly concerned as a nation over those two issues.
Exactly. What advice, you know, finally, what advice do you have for people that are interested in starting their own organization in their area, in their community? What advice can you give them to, you know, maybe get them started and give them that extra motivation to start an organization?
Sure. A couple things. Number one, I think working within your own circle of influence. Most people who pay attention to politics already know they're kind of not normal. They're the person that they have 10 or 15 friends that when a vote's coming up, their friends call them and say, who should I vote for? Who should I vote for? And
Right.
so if you're that person, then you're already kind of, in the right place to start a group in your own community. And then I think it's just about finding some like-minded individuals and just starting to do something. If people want ideas about the things you can do, like I said, it's not hard to influence politicians. It's really not. But you need to know how to do it, when to do it, why to do it, and again, to avoid the mean-spiritedness. And we have a website called MakeLansingListen.com that people can go to and see examples of what we've been able to do with very little money, and just being creative and finding out what's going on. So I think the biggest thing is not getting caught up in being all organized and what kind of organization should we be, but just getting started. Another thing, a resource is if they go to mackinac.org, they have a thing called the Tea Party Toolkit that gives some great advice about getting a Tea Party started, a Tea Party group, and how to really think about the movement in a way that's really going to have an impact. Because rallies are so fun, and they're a great way to get a group of people together and have your voices be heard and hear some great speeches and get fired up. But it's almost like, as a Christian, you go to church on Sunday, but Monday morning is when the real work starts to walk out your faith. Well, going to a Tea Party rally is a great time to get all fired up, but that next Monday morning, that's when you get up and you really have political influence. And politicians don't care about our rallies. They're not frightened by them. They do fear what we're going to do that Monday morning if they've misbehaved. And that's where people need to plug in. So the Tea Party Toolkit at mackinac.org and then Make Lansing Listen are the two places that I would refer people to if they want to kind of find out some ideas about how to start a group. And then I just say, just do something. Just start. Don't worry about doing it perfectly. Just start.
Great. Well, I hope everyone is listening. That is a great way to get started. And again, I'm going to post some more information about Wendy on Twitter tonight. I thank you so much for coming on the show, taking time out of your busy schedule. Do you have any events coming up anytime soon?
If people want to go to Michigan HCF, that's H as in Henry, C as in cat, F as in Frank, .com. That's the website for the Michigan Citizens for Healthcare Freedom Petition Drive. They can request petitions. They can find events near them. That really is where our heart and soul is. If we don't stop this healthcare takeover by the federal government and prevent one by the state government, our country is fundamentally transformed. So I'm just hoping that everybody who has concerns about the state of our country and the direction will find out about this petition drive and hop on board and help us make this happen.
All right. Well, thanks again so much, Wendy. I'm going to definitely have you come on the show again. Like I said, you're inspiration to me, and like I said, I'm sure you're inspiration
thank
to a lot
you.
of other people. So thank you so much for coming on the show tonight, and God bless you.
You too. Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
All right. That was Wendy Lynn Day, again, who's an organizer here in Michigan that has been instrumental in Tea Party rallies and different functions throughout the state. She's had some big rallies at the state capitol, and I thank her for coming on the show tonight. My second guest, who's running for governor, Mike Bouchard. He's currently the Oakland County Sheriff, and that is one of the largest counties in the country. And he has a very distinguished record, and he is very qualified for this position. And I want to let you guys hear the interview that I spoke with him. I spoke with him on Friday for this interview. So listen in, and if you have any questions after the interview, give me a call at 347-996-3175. You're listening to Fix Michigan Mondays. Here's my interview with Mike Bouchard. Thank you for listening to Conservatives Cool Talk Radio, and we're doing the Fix Michigan Monday show, and I have a great guest with me today. He's a candidate for governor in the state of Michigan, and he's right now currently the sheriff of Oakland County, Mike Bouchard. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing great. We're talking a lot on the show about how we can fix Michigan. And me doing my research on you, obviously running for governor, I would like to hear exactly what you think what you can do to fix Michigan. And if you could, just starting off, could you give us a little background about yourself? A lot of people know you, but for those who might not, could you just give us some background information about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'll go back a little bit. I was a police officer for 12 years and simultaneously owned and operated 3 small businesses. So I signed the front of checks and the back of checks. And then simultaneous to that, typical type A, I was also on a council while I was a police officer and owned businesses, and then ultimately council president, which is like being the mayor. And as a result of all that, I saw that a lot of what I was dealing with in my small business and as a police officer was related to politics, so I ran for the legislature. I served 8 years in the Senate as a leader in the Senate, and a lot of the issues that we're facing now, I was very much a part of as a leader in the Senate in the 90s when we had to fix these very similar problems.
Right.
In 99, I felt that we had dealt with a lot of those issues. We had $1 billion cash in the bank. We had a AAA bond rating, and we're ranked one of the top 5 states in America to grow or start a business. So I left the legislature to come back into law enforcement and took over the sheriff's office with over 1,200 employees about 11 years ago. And that's where I've been ever since until I saw that a lot of the same problems that I got involved in before have come back, and now I'm worried about my kids and your kids and everyone else is leaving this state to find a future out of necessity, not by choice.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the situation. Like you said, people are starting to leave this state. How much does that frustrate you, knowing that when you left, things were in good shape, and now, like you said, 10 years later, you look at it and we're in such a big hole that we're in now?
Oh, it's very frustrating. I mean, we had set things into the right path, and obviously you have to constantly readjust and reassess where you are, and had they done that in a systemic, structural way, we wouldn't be in the situation we are today. So you have to confront problems head on. You have to sometimes be willing to be unpopular, make tough decisions without regard to the next election, but with only focus on the next generation, and that's what needs to be done now.
What would be like the first thing that you would do if you were elected governor? What would be some of the changes that you would make immediately?
Well, I think you have to immediately freeze all non-essential spend. You also freeze all pending regulation. The 2 biggest impediments to job growth is taxation and regulation and spending concurrently. We're spending more than we have in the state government and a lot of government levels, and we're taking more money than people still currently have. We've gone from the top 20th wealthiest states per capita in America in the last 9 years to the bottom 10. So our taxpayers, our bosses, if you will, have less money to pay. We can't expect to spend the same amount because they don't have the same amount. So that's the reality. So you've got to freeze spending and non-essential spending, and then begin to immediately go after structural systemic change that can put us in a position to draw business here and to allow business already here, equally if not more important, to grow. That will allow the economy to grow here again. Government doesn't create one job, but what it creates is an environment where private entrepreneurs create the jobs. The only jobs government creates is when they hire people, and the only way they can hire people is take money from somebody else.
Right. Would you what would you do with the Michigan business tax? Is that something that you would try to get rid of, or how would you work with that?
Yeah, that was a mess. That's got to go. Again, it's because of a flawed focus. Their whole focus was we need to spend the same amount next year we spent last year, and so that was the focus when they recreated the tax structure, which became the MBT, the Michigan business tax, was spending the same amount, not being competitive.
Right.
Every business is in competition. Hamburger places compete against the neighborhood hamburger shop. Governments compete against other governments. So until we make our tax and regulatory structure in the state of Michigan competitive with Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Alabama, all of the other states and countries, and realize that we're competing head-to-head against them, then we're not going to change our economic growth.
Right. Would you as far as with the tax situation here, period, would you support the Michigan fair tax?
Well, whether it's a fair tax or a flat tax, it has to be low, easy to comply with, competitive. It has to be, in my opinion, if it's a business tax, it has to be profit-based, not activity or payroll-based. So that, again, the whole focus has to be what will be competitive, what will allow and encourage job growth here, now.
Right. I thought last year I was at the Mackinac conference, and I listened to L. Brooks Patterson speak about the way he does the budget in Oakland County, and I thought that was I figure it's a 2-year rolling plan. Is that something maybe that you would try to implement in the state government, or why haven't we done that yet? I would guess that would be the other question.
Absolutely. To your question, actually, we now do a 3-year rolling budget. So, we try to stay in balance 3 years from now, not in the current year. And I would absolutely implement a minimum of a 2-year rolling budget in the state. You couldn't do beyond that because you've got 2-year legislative session, but you do a 2-year rolling budget with a 3-year forecast, so that you use a longer forecast, you have it outside independently verified, so it's not overly rosy, and then you adopt a 2-year rolling budget, which you constantly amend based on changing conditions. So if you see conditions worsening, you make cuts today. So as a result, we're in balance 3 years from now. I have eliminated so far 70 plus positions, almost 77 positions, without laying off one deputy, because we look out, saw it coming, froze hiring, and then started to make changes. So, we've stayed within our budget lines by being proactive and reassessing what's a need and a want, what's a priority, and only funding the priorities that are needs, and the wants, sadly, some of them are very good, have to go away, and the state has done none of this.
Right. I've done a lot of research on you, and I read a quote that Mike Bishop said that he realized that you're all about business, and you even said that you didn't have an issue with maybe even being a one-term governor if it meant you had to get the job done correctly. I think that's almost the attitude we need nowadays of our leaders. Do you think that in the current situation as far as jobs, how much are the unions affecting new jobs in Michigan? And is there anything we could do? Obviously, we can't eliminate unions or anything in Michigan like that, but is there anything we could do to maybe work better with the unions, or maybe get them to release some of the regulation to make it a better place to work or start a business in Michigan?
Yeah, there's a lot we can and must do. I am all about jobs because, again, for me, it's creating an environment where jobs can grow and my kids can get a job when they get out of school and stay in the state. That's why I'm running, and that's what I want to fix. So for me, that's exactly why I'm very comfortable saying and being willing to be a one-term governor, because the reason I'm doing this is I want jobs to begin to grow here so my kids can stay here. And any parent listening understands that that's all that matters.
Right.
Kids have a future, and having your kids around you during that future. So, if I'm successful in that and unpopular with, some folks that don't like status quo being changed, so be it. Because the goal is not to be popular. The goal is not to win another election. The goal is to, instead of being focused on the next election, to be focused on the next generation.
Exactly. How much, how much do you feel that the unions, and as far as bringing in new jobs, the plants and things of that nature, how much do you feel that plays a part in us not getting some of these newer automotive jobs, like obviously with Kia and Fisher Automotive that went to Delaware? Do you think that plays a large part in why we're not getting the jobs, or is there some other factor?
In part, but we've got a lot of bad rocks in our rucksack. What we've got is a bad tax policy, a bad regulatory policy. We have, some inherent, costs, whether it's applied to labor or other things that. So, you're going to have to go through a number of things and become more competitive. The first thing, directly within the control of the governor, though, is the tax and regulatory policy.
Right.
When Reagan was elected, then Speaker of the House, Democrat Tip O'Neill, said to Reagan something like this, that you may have 10 things on your list you want to get done. If you focus on 2, and if you can get one of those 2 done, you've made an impact. And so if I can change the regulatory and the tax policy such that businesses can grow again, that's a good start, and that's worthwhile in that first term.
Exactly. Let's see here. Another issue, obviously, that affects us in the job market will be the idea of improving our education systems here in Michigan. Are you open to more charter schools and competition amongst charter schools and public schools?
Yes. Actually, I chaired education when charter schools went through my committee. The purpose of that was to try to give parents the opportunity to pick a school based on their child and their child's needs and circumstances. I'm a believer that we ought to take the cap off on charter schools in failing districts and focus on allowing an unlimited number of charter schools in failing districts from charter schools that are already performing in the top quartile. So what that does is say charter schools that are already at the top can come into any school districts that's failing and open a school.
Oh.
It would give parents in that failing district an opportunity to not have a generation that's lost, to have their children have an opportunity to learn.
Excellent, excellent. Have you been to any of the tea parties, and what do you think the effect of the tea parties has been here in Michigan?
Yes, I have been to them, and I think the effect is pretty broad-based, not just in Michigan, but across the country. By and large, when you talk to people there, the vast majority have never been involved in anything political, but they're concerned, they're angry, they're anxious about the future of the state and about the future of the country, with incredible wasteful spending, with TARP and bailouts and stimulus and super tax and bridge to nowhere and all the just crazy spending in Washington and Lansing. They look at that and they're worried about their kids and grandkids' future being mortgaged away. And the other point is this: I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. If you're voting for those things, the TARPs and the super taxes and the bailouts and all of the $1 trillion of debt that are being heaped on my future grandkids,
right,
you need to go home. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. That is unacceptable. And there's been people on both sides that have been very active in mortgaging our kids and our grandkids' future, and it's got to stop.
do you support the current Attorney General's position on filing a lawsuit for the health care bill and trying to fight it from that standpoint, or do you think that that right now that might not be effective and probably needs to be fought through congressional debate?
Well, I think you take any avenue. I mean, some of the things I've read is that it may not be successful, but that doesn't mean you don't try it. I would support the litigation. I would also support the opt-out provisions that's being circulated among the states to give people that opportunity and choice. I would also support, as governor, I will be a big advocate and a user of the 10th Amendment and use other tools within my toolbox and at my fingertips. I will use everything I can to make sure that the federal government isn't sending more and more unfunded mandates onto the backs of Michigan and its taxpayers. Just that health care is expected to cost between $450 and another $600 million to the state of Michigan when we're already $2 billion out of balance.
Right. Where are we supposed to get that money is the question. And it's supposed to be like a balloon payment or something like that we be required to pay to the federal government. So where are we supposed to get that money from?
Money we don't have. We have to cut, not add to the spending. That's the thought process that's making this state and the country broke.
And you did sign. I think I saw it on Facebook. You did sign that health care petition that's been floating around too, right?
I did.
All right.
Yeah.
That's good. I think we have some good candidates. I think everyone on the Republican side has signed that petition except one person, but we won't mention names. I think that you've been running a very positive campaign. Some of the opponents haven't. What do you think about that? And how do you feel about that when you see sometimes people are making personal attacks?
I think it's unwarranted. I think it's sad, and I think it's desperate. I don't think any personal attacks should be in the public square. I think you focus on the issues. And I take this like a job interview. If I walk into a job interview, I don't say who else is in the running and start berating them. The point of this is that you've got to, I think, explain very clearly why you think you're the right person, have the right skills and credentials to do the job, and let people make a decision based on that. Not, geez, my opponent in kindergarten, didn't pass reading. The personal attacks don't go to the relevance of your ability to get the job done. So that's what I'm focused on. This is all about creating jobs in the state and an environment where jobs are created. I wish everybody would stay to that focus and that tact, and that's where, I think the people want us to be. That's what their concerns are. And I think they get angry when they see, some of these politicians throwing mud in an effort to bolster themselves. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for solutions.
I totally agree. More than anything, that kind of turns people off to the whole debate when you start seeing things getting personal. If in one statement, what will be the difference? We have, as far as GOP candidates, you have some good candidates. What will be the defining differences between you and the other candidates?
Pretty much everything that the next governor will have to do in January of 2011, I've done. All of these issues. I chaired education for 3 years when we reformed education. I chaired transportation appropriations when we started to rebuild our roads. I was the vice chair of mental health and human services. So when we reformed welfare, I was in the middle of that. Pretty much everything you can talk about that we need to address now, I had done before in the early 90s. So for me, it's kind of been there, done that. Secondly, the current governor's even admitted more than once that one of her biggest challenges and frankly failings is that she wasn't a legislator. I was a legislative leader for 8 years, so I understand the process. I understand how important it is to get 56 votes and 20 in the Senate, and that's what I did as a leader in the Senate. I was one of the ones that helped get the votes to get the agenda to reform welfare, to cut taxes, to make us business friendly. So I know how to move that process, and if you can't move the process, you don't get a bill to sign, and as governor, you're going to be useless. So you really need to know what to do, which I do. You have to know how to do it, which I'm the only one that was a leader when it worked. And last, you have to be willing to do it, and that's what I talked about, being willing to be a one-term governor. And I'm the only one that's run a very large government organization successfully within budgets for over a decade. No one else has done that. So in essence, I sat in the seat of what exactly the governor will need to do: run a large government, know how to move legislation, and get an agenda done. And I'm the only one that's done all that. And so, the question to the voters will be, do you want somebody that's done it? It's like if you're going to go in and have heart surgery, you want somebody that's done it?
Right.
People are out walking around and they're healthy? Or do you want somebody that said, I read the book and I got a plan?
Right, exactly. You also have a great running mate. I spoke with Terry Lynn last week. She was on the show. What made you decide to run with Terry, and give us a little background on that?
Well, Terry has been somebody I've known and appreciated and respected for a long time. She, as you know, was running for governor before I got in the race. When I got in, she came to the conclusion that I had the best experience to be the next governor, so she dropped out and endorsed me, which I greatly appreciated. We started spending more time together campaigning, and the more time we spent together, the more I thought it made total sense to ask her to be my running mate, because not only is she a great campaigner and somebody that I enjoy in the campaign trail and helps a lot, given the respect that the state has for her and the job she's done as Secretary of State, but more importantly and equally challenging ahead from the campaign is governing. And she can pivot immediately from campaigning with me to governing with me. So she can be a partner immediately as we begin to do the tough undertaking of changing the direction of the state by fixing Lansing so we can get Michigan back to work.
You guys do sound like you have the most pound for pound experience. Is definitely on your side. Where's your next location, and how's it been on the campaign trail? Where are you going to next, and how's it been on the campaign trail?
Well, it's been great. We're going all over the state. Tonight I'm going to the far southwest corner of the state to give a speech and meet more people, answer their questions. If I can't answer any question somebody throws at me, then I shouldn't be governor. And I'm willing to do that in an open, free-flowing format or forum. I've done it a number of times, and I'm going to continue to do it. And I think it's going great. We feel very comfortable with where we are and how we get to not only the finish line in August in the primary, but in November in the general, and then equally important, transitioning into how to fix the problems in Lansing.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'll tell you what, it sounds like you have a great plan. Can you give your website address and any information for people listening so if they want to go and check your website out, support you, or become a volunteer, they know where to go?
Absolutely. Bouchard, Bouchard, 4FOR Governor.com. Bouchard4Governor.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Sheriff Bouchard, for coming on the show. I appreciate you coming on. Good luck with the campaign. I'll be reaching out to you soon, because I think I want to bring all the GOP candidates closer to the Detroit area to do a debate and to maybe again introduce you guys more in that area. So I really do appreciate you coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a good day. God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so that was my interview with Mike Bouchard, who's running for governor. And last week I had his running mate Terry Lynn on the show. I think it was very interesting to listen to his actual his actual background, and I think that tells a lot. He's actually trailing, I want to say right now in the race, but his background and experience, and also the fact that his running mate with Terry Lynn Land, they have a lot of experience getting things done here in Michigan. And Terry Lynn Land has a great track record right now as Secretary of State. So I think they have some experience. On last Friday, I was at a meet and greet with Pete Hoekstra, who's also running for governor, who I hope to have on the show very soon. We have some really good candidates for governor on the GOP side this time. I think that it's just going to be a matter of who the voters are most comfortable with. May 3rd, which is in 2 weeks, I'll actually have Rick Snyder live at 9 p.m., so I'm really looking forward to that interview. He's going to be my first gubernatorial candidate that's going to come on live, so we're waiting to get confirmation dates from both from Mike Cox's camp and Pete Hoekstra's camp, so hopefully at some point I want to have them all on the show, and again, I'm going to be taping all those interviews, so hopefully maybe one night have the proverbial Royal Rumble with all four of the candidates. That's my goal here. So again, we're looking for the best candidates who can fix Michigan. We're looking for problem solvers, not just rhetoric, not just talking points. We're looking for concrete solutions, and I really heard some great solutions. I heard exactly what Mike Bouchard would do if he was elected governor, and some of his first steps. And I think that to me is a very important question that needs to be answered from the standpoint of what would they do immediately to fix the problems in Michigan, because it can't be a situation of where that people are dealing with these kind of people and they're not being honest with the people that are electing them. Sorry, I'm reading a text message. Chris, if you're listening, give me a call, man. Call in 347-996-3175. I'm getting messages on my Twitter, and I'm trying to read those at the same time I'm giving commentary on the show. I apologize. I do think that the answers that Mike Bouchard gave about putting spending freezes immediately from the day he comes in, those are the kind of solutions. Again, might be tough decisions that need to be made, but decisions that have to be, these are the tough decisions that have to be made. Just like with the current mayor in Detroit, going to be some unpopular decisions amongst certain people, but if you want to move forward and essentially do things that probably should have been done years ago when it comes to bureaucratic waste and bad spending, the changes have to be made now. From the standpoint of, I don't know if people watched the Dateline show last night about Detroit. I would encourage everyone who didn't watch that show to watch it online. I want to first say that Detroit is not that bad. If you watched that show last night, I don't know what you would have walked away from feeling like Detroit had any really positives or good points to it. But I want to say that sometimes the media it's easy to bash Detroit because of some of the failures, the obvious failures. But the city is not that bad, and I just want people to know that. But it is going to require leaders who are willing to make changes and do things quickly. So I got a caller here. I think this is Chris calling. Let me take this call. Caller, you on the air?
Hey, what's up, Wayne?
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good.
How'd you like the show tonight, Chris?
Oh, I liked it. I like all your shows.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for all your help. We got Michael Johns on here. We're going to get the Jim Judd interview, and Chuck DeVore, he's a little busier, but we're going to get all those guys on the show, and I want to, while you're on the air, thank you again, because we communicate a lot, but I'm always in and out, man. I really appreciate the help and also your support, man. So thank you.
I would love to hear Liz Cheney on there. I wish that there would be a way that you could get her on there.
Well, there's always a way. So I will take that into consideration, and like you said, maybe we'll reach out to some of our past friends like Michael Johns. He might be helpful in getting her on there. But there's always a way, and we can just through email and networking, you can always make things happen. So
So
appreciate
you
that suggestion. And I'll see what
you
I
have
can
to
do.
go through a certain process to get these candidates on your show?
Some of them are, some of them are harder than others. Like I said, through networking on Facebook and email and stuff, you meet a lot of people. And I go to events and stuff where I can get in touch with some of these people. But the more popular the candidate is, or the higher up he is in the polls, the harder it is to get that person on your show. I'll be honest. That's been my personal experience. But again, I'm a very small media outlet. I'm not, Fox. Some of the same people that say that they're too busy to come on my show might see them on 3 different shows in a week on national outlets. So, it's just a challenge of being a smaller outlet. But again, I have a large following on Twitter, and everything on the web can go viral. So, sometimes it's an opportunity for them to speak with normal people. I'm not a trained media professional looking to play gotcha politics and stuff like that. I'm asking genuinely and open and honest questions. There's nothing, I'm not trying to again, trick people for ratings or anything like that. I just bring on people that I generally believe that people want to hear from and hear their answers, and that's kind of like how I base, obviously the people I talk to are people I'm interested in talking to myself, but I also, I try to bring people on who I think, don't necessarily have to be famous, but people that can add thought-provoking commentary and insight to what's going on out here.
Well, I would think that genuinely people that follow the Constitution really close are our best bet for November. I know that we're pretty much probably 3 years out of being able to, clean up this mess. Barack would come out and say, grab a mop or something like that. It's like, what, that's I think is the gist of what we're doing. So
yeah, well, he made a statement something like that before, and the thing is, honestly, he came into a rough job, but he knew that before he took the job. So, I compare that similar to the coach that comes and takes over the Detroit Lions.
right.
You can't complain about the past coach. You knew the mess you were getting into before you came here. So, don't complain. Make things better, and don't look at the past as your reason why you can't get something done.
And plus, would you consider that a lot of what he said on his campaign trail would be really misleading?
He was campaigning, and he's still campaigning. Essentially, that's what he's been doing throughout his tenure. Is that he creates these, or he thinks up these wild policies, and these left policies, these large government takeover policies, and then from there, he goes back out on the campaign trail again. He rolls up his sleeves and goes to all these small town, these set up town hall meetings where he can, obviously set forth his agenda. And I haven't really seen. I can't say that I've seen that much, but he takes his arguments to the people.
Right.
Although they're his people, they're his supporters. Let's be clear about that. They're his supporters and people that want to actually hear what he has to say. But since he's been president, he's been in campaign mode, and I think
did you see the question?
That's why you're not
asked
getting
about,
anything honest
about
out of it, because he's always in spin and politics mode.
Did you see the question that was asked at the one event that he was at? This lady asked him about them imposing taxes, and it took him like 17 minutes to answer the question.
Well, again, he's trained politician, and he doesn't have a good answer for these kind of things. So he lollygags around with it for as long as he can. But again, it doesn't. I understand that if you put a lot of politicians in positions where normal people ask common sense questions, they're going to stumble because we're asking common sense questions. We're not talking in Washington D.C. dialect. We're talking in common sense terms, and they don't ever have answers for that. And I think that's where a lot of our politicians, Republicans and Democrats, have let us down. If you ask honest, straightforward questions, they struggle to answer them because that's not what they're used to been dealing with, and with this truth and common sense. So hopefully we can move forward on that, man. But that's what I'm looking forward to doing in the future here, man.
Yeah, I thought it was really disappointing when he dissed John McCain. I don't agree with John McCain on every avenue, but I wouldn't diss him like that. He was a prisoner of war for 6 years, so.
He doesn't respect that or anything else. He has a very big ego here, and that's what we looking for. That's what we got here. Hey, Chris, I got 10 seconds left on the show tonight, man. I'm going off the air. Thanks for calling in, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for everyone that's listening in tonight. Make sure you go to conservativescool.com. Good night. God bless you. Talk to you later, Chris.
Good night.
Night.